I'm fearing for Lucas's life right now. I think this is serious.
We're panicking. We're all panicking.
Generally, predators go after weakened prey.
They discover a body hanging from a tree.
It's very difficult. It feels completely unreal. This can't be happening. It's a nightmare.
On March 18, 2015, 15-year-old Lucas Tronche disappears from his home in Bagnols-sur-Cèze in the Gard.
It's not normal for him to leave and not tell us or contact us.
The police first consider the possibility that he's run away.
If he had wanted to run away or if he wasn't happy, I think I would have noticed.
Soon, the possibility of foul play is at the center of the investigation.
A bad encounter that could have gone as far as murder? Yes, for me it's plausible.
They think that maybe a sex offender has something to do with a disappearance.
Was Lucas the victim of a predator?
We were scared. Scared that other children would go missing.
At the time, the whole town was traumatized.
What if Lucas crossed paths with Nordal Leland?
We wondered if he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Where is Lucas? Is he alive?
For the police, the idea that Lucas left for love starts to form.
What if Lucas was unable to get in touch?
A case of false imprisonment where he absolutely could not get out? Yes, it's possible.
I'm thinking he's locked up somewhere. He's waiting. He's hoping we'll find him.
Jean-Marc Bloch, former head of the Versailles Police Department, and Negar Haedi, criminal lawyer, will join us as we look back on this unsolved case. Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. It's the end of a beautiful day in Bagnols-sur-Cèze. Nathalie Tronche is waiting at the bus stop for her two eldest sons, 15-year-old Lucas and 17-year-old Valentin. Like every Wednesday at 8 p.m., the two boys are due back from their swimming lessons.
Valentin gets off the bus, he comes to the car. I roll down the window right away and I ask him, "Where's your brother?" He tells me he must be at home. He didn't come to the pool. I tell him I've been at home since 6 o'clock and there's no one home.
So where is Lucas? Nathalie immediately tries to call her son, but the teenager's phone is turned off. Worried, she calls Matisse, Lucas's best friend.
Matisse hadn't heard from Lucas all afternoon.
Valentin tells his mother that he spent the afternoon at home with Lucas, and that when he left to catch the bus to the swimming pool, his brother wasn't ready.
Around 5:05 p.m., I think, Valentin told him, "We have to hurry. It isn't around the corner." So Valentin got his things and Lucas said, "Valentin, go ahead. I'll lock up." Valentin left, thinking his brother was going to follow him. Valentin thought his brother wasn't very far behind him.
Valentin then went as usual to the bus stop on a scooter. But when the bus arrived at 5:30, Lucas wasn't there.
When he got on the bus at 5:30, Lucas hadn't arrived. He tried to call him and he got his voicemail. He thought, well, he's missed the bus. The bus left.
Valentin tells his mother that he didn't worry much more about his brother's absence. He went to the pool alone.
15 days earlier, Valentin was the one who had missed the bus. He hadn't gone to the pool. It wasn't very serious in itself.
With no news from Lucas and unable to contact her son, Nathalie Tronche begins to fear that something serious has happened.
Lucas is a very sensible teenager. We always know where he is. His phone is never on airplane mode or off. He's always reachable. It's not normal for him to leave and not tell us or contact us. It's very worrying. At this moment, we're very worried.
Back home, Nathalie Tronche hopes her son will return at any moment. She notices that the teenager's swimsuit and towel are still in the house. So Lucas never intended to go to the pool. But then, where is he and what's he doing? Unable to contain her anxiety anymore, his mother decides to alert the authorities. At 8:30 p.m., Nathalie Tronche goes to the Bagnols-sur-Cèze police station to report her son missing. It's now been more than 3 hours since Lucas disappeared.
At the police station, they immediately take me seriously.
The police officer gathers all the necessary information to start the search.
I give them a photo. I explain that he's about 5'5", he has light brown hair, he doesn't have a beard, he's a teenager, he's slim.
According to Nathalie Tronche, Lucas is wearing blue jeans, white sneakers, and a gray and burgundy reversible down jacket. She points out that he took his navy blue backpack with Hawaiian flowers.
It went on for a very long time. The report took a very long time because in the end, I think I left the police station at 11:30 p.m. It was very long, but at the same time, they sent out officers the same evening.
When Nathalie Tronche returns home, the first police patrols are already searching for Lucas. Surrounded by friends who have come to support her, she waits for Eric, her husband, to return from a business trip.
When I get here, I see that the lights are on, and there are a lot of cars. And I come across friends arriving at the same time. At the time, I think there's a party. A friend says to me, "Don't you know? Come inside the house. We'll sit down. I'll tell you what's going on."
This is how Eric Tronche learns about the terrible news.
They tell me, "Lucas has been missing since we realized at 8 o'clock. But since 5 p.m., we haven't known where he is."
Eric Tronche then remembers a place where his son likes to go, a somewhat dangerous place where Lucas could have had an accident.
There's a ruined house nearby. Stones can fall. So we take flashlights and we go looking in the ruins to find out if Lucas is unconscious among the stones.
The group explores the house and its surroundings, but there's no sign of the boy. Eric and Nathalie Tronche, getting more and more worried, then suggest another possibility. What if Lucas had decided to go find rocks for his collection instead of going to the pool?
Between the house and the Cèze Bridge, there's a vineyard where there are several black rocks. He enjoyed collecting rocks from that vineyard. At the start, he was convinced they were meteorites.
He has a whole shelf with piles of rocks. He collects them.
So we think maybe he went looking for rocks and he fell. He could have broken something or lost consciousness. We were imagining the worst.
Eric and Nathalie Tronche go there with some friends and comb through the vineyard. In vain. The police then send a search and rescue dog to the missing teenager's home. There's an urgent need to locate Lucas.
We give the dog handler some shoes so that the dog can smell the soles and pick up Lucas's scent.
Without hesitation, the dog begins to follow a trail. He heads for the river.
He goes towards the Cèze River, and they go to search around the Cèze.
But a few dozen yards along the riverbank, the dog stops. The police continue the search with flashlights. They search the vegetation as well as the banks of the Cèze.
The flashlights have a short range at night. After a while, they say, "Okay, let's stop. We'll carry on when it's light out."
Lucas seems to have vanished. At 3:30 a.m., the searches are temporarily put on hold.
We want to keep looking. Eric has the same mindset.
We don't know what to do, and we're being told to rest before tomorrow's search. I'm fearing for Lucas's life right now, so I'm not reassured at all. I think we're going to find Lucas's body.
It's been 10 hours since Lucas disappeared. The night is cold. Eric and Nathalie wait for the search to resume.
I still have this image when we closed our shutters that night of us peering into the darkness and saying to each other, "It's awful, he's out there and we don't know where."
When dawn breaks, Lucas's parents discover that many volunteers have come to assist the police and fire department with the search. After hearing about the teenager's disappearance, the deputy public prosecutor of Nîmes immediately authorizes the press to broadcast a missing person appeal. Major human and logistical resources are then deployed. In and around Bagnols-sur-Cèze, there are many steep areas. To search the hard-to-reach places, soldiers from the French Foreign Legion are called in as reinforcements, and cavers explore the caves.
We're panicking. We're all panicking, because when you see the forest around us, it's worrying. There are wild boars. There are pits.
Everywhere, the search is intensified. A police helicopter flies over the area. Meanwhile, divers probe the riverbed of the Cèze, and dozens of officers comb the land. The police received the first witness statement. A neighbor of the Tronche family says she saw Lucas the day he disappeared. Madeleine Paroil lives about 300 yards from Lucas's house.
I was on my terrace sewing. At one point, I looked up towards the gate, and I saw a teenager walking by wearing a backpack and an anorak. I'd say it was light gray.
We know her a little. She knows what Lucas looks like. The clothes match Lucas's clothes.
For me, it could have been Lucas.
Madeleine says that it was around 5:15 p.m. According to her, the teenager was heading towards the end of the path into the fields behind the house. The police take this testimony very seriously because the timing fits with Lucas's disappearance.
They looked all around the little cabin behind. There are vineyards behind on an enclosed plot. So they went to look behind all over inside it.
A police dog handler is rushed to the site. Soon, the dogs head in a very specific direction.
They follow this trail and do a big circuit.
For 3 hours, the dogs follow Lucas's trail at a steady pace. Their route takes them in a 6-mile loop, finally returning in the direction of the teenager's house.
What emerges from these first searches with the dog team is that Lucas seems to have gone for a walk, and he seemed to be returning home, at least towards home.
That's when a second witness contacts the police. This is Stephanie Bonhomme, who lives on a farm just over a mile from the Tronche family's home on the edge of the forest. This woman thinks she saw Lucas walking past her house a little earlier in the day.
I was told that a young boy had disappeared, so I paid more attention. I was paying more attention, and while ironing at one point, I saw a young man passing by.
This young man's attitude intrigues Stephanie Bonhomme.
I got the impression that he was hiding. I looked, he caught my eye, I stopped ironing, and then I saw him running.
Stephanie Bonhomme describes the young man she saw.
He looked like a teenager wearing a down jacket and a burgundy color and sneakers. I realized that it was Lucas, who I had seen.
The police know that Lucas's jacket is reversible, with a light gray side and a burgundy side.
It's reasonable to think that Lucas may have changed the side of his down jacket to be less recognizable.
According to this testimony, Lucas looked like he was hiding. The police begin to consider the possibility that he ran away.
They tell us, "There you go. We see this a lot. He has run away."
The dogs are taken to Stephanie Bonhomme's farm, and very quickly they seem to pick up Lucas's scent.
Lucas apparently is in this place, according to the dog handler.
But after a few hundred yards, the dogs stop, exhausted by their search, which started very early.
But we think we must keep looking, because if we keep going, we'll find him.
Lucas's parents then enlist a private dog handler from a search and rescue group in Avignon.
We go to the place where the police dogs stopped, and we pick up the trail again.
After a few hundred yards, the dog stops near a thicket.
I remember that the dog handler said, "Here, where my dog does this, it's because she's not far from the person." So you imagine, okay, that's it. We found Lucas. We're going crazy.
For more than 3 hours, the group scours the area by the glow of their flashlights. In vain. At 2 a.m., the dog is tired. The searches must once again be put on hold.
For the second night, we leave Lucas all alone in these huge woods.
It's very difficult. It's completely unreal. This can't be happening. It's a nightmare.
The idea of an accident is fading because 100 people have been looking all day. Personally, I start thinking, has he run away? Or did an accident happen much further away? Why wasn't he found on the first day? I start imagining the worst on Thursday night.
Jean-Marc, the first striking thing in this case is the speed with which the search began. Nathalie Tronche arrived at the Bagnols-sur-Cèze police station at 8:30 p.m., and 2 hours later, while she was still being questioned, the first police patrol started searching for Lucas. Can you explain why, in some missing person cases, the search starts immediately, while in others it takes several days for the investigations to begin?
First of all, Lucas is 15 years old. He's a minor. This makes his disappearance concerning, and it must be taken seriously. In addition, I think his mother was able to convince the investigators that her worries were well-founded. She explained to the investigators that her son isn't the type to leave the family home without saying what he's doing or where he's going. So the search begins immediately, especially knowing that in these kinds of circumstances, it's a race against time. The more time passes, the less chance there is of finding Lucas safe and sound.
Even though major resources have been deployed by the authorities, we saw that Lucas's parents called in an independent search and rescue team to continue the search late at night. Are there guidelines for this kind of private initiative?
Of course, we always try to control the initiatives taken by the families, to coordinate them with our own, so that they don't harm the investigation or contaminate possible leads. But of course, we can't oppose it. In this kind of situation, you can't stay passive. You can't sit around waiting.
Very quickly, Lucas's parents suggest to the investigators the possibility of an accident.
Of course, this is the first possibility that comes to mind, especially since Lucas's parents tell the investigators that he sometimes wanders around the countryside to look for rocks, and that to find rare rocks, he's willing to go to hard-to-reach places that can be dangerous.
What can we deduce from the testimony of the neighbor who says she saw Lucas walk past at around 5:15 p.m.? This was only a few minutes after his brother Valentin left.
On the one hand, it proves that he was not under duress at that moment and he was free to move. What's more, it could suggest that he told his brother, "Go to the pool, I'll meet you," even though he had a completely different plan in mind, going for a walk somewhere else.
In your opinion, what did he intend to do?
At the moment, it's impossible to answer that question, but we can consider the trail followed by the dog from the neighbor's house to the family house for 6 miles. 6 miles would take about 2 hours to walk. We can imagine that Lucas thought about returning before his mother became worried.
Second theory, the runaway. Another neighbor says she saw Lucas the day after he disappeared. According to her, he seemed to be hiding, which may seem a little strange because if Lucas had really intended to run away, logically, he wouldn't have stayed near his home.
That's right. Generally, runaways try to put a great distance between themselves and the home they left. But often, they quickly get hungry, thirsty, too hot or too cold, and they want to return to the family home. But for fear of punishment, they don't dare to return immediately.
It's now been more than 48 hours since Lucas disappeared. Nathalie and Eric Tronche spend a second night anxiously hoping for news of their son. Meanwhile, the investigators try to find out who Lucas is, what he likes, and what could have driven him to leave his family.
English poem, Multicultural Day. People of many nations, of black and white and brown, they celebrate their cultures in the big park in the town. Migrants and children of migrants from places near and far away. Their cultures are celebrated.
Lucas is a truly extraordinary teenager. He pays attention to everything. He helps us with everything. He's the ideal child.
He's a lovely and happy boy. He likes to laugh a lot. A helpful child. Always listening to others. Always wanting everyone around him to be happy.
The second of three sons, Lucas gets along well with his brothers. He's also very close to his parents, who are researchers in the nuclear industry.
They're a golden family. They do things. They travel. They make plans. They love their children. It's the family children dream of having.
Everything is going well for Lucas, at home and at high school. He's a good student who loves weekends when he meets up with his scout friends in Bagnols.
Lucas is very kind and a bit of a dreamer. He loves nature and doesn't let things get to him.
Nathalie Tronche is sure of it. Her son had no reason to run away.
We don't understand why he would have left, because at home there's a good atmosphere. He gets along well with his brothers and with us.
Lola, who's known Lucas since elementary school, feels the same way.
If he had wanted to run away or if he wasn't happy, I think I would have noticed.
Nothing about Lucas's behavior warned his loved ones.
I remember the morning before he disappeared. He looked very smart. He was wearing a shirt and he was really upbeat. That's why it seemed weird to me that he would run away, since he looked happy that day.
Lucas seems to be a teenager without any problems. So why did he decide on Wednesday, March 18th, 2015, to leave home without telling his parents? The police decide to question all his classmates. They want to make sure the boy has no secrets from his family.
What they discover, however, is that since he was a child, without the family knowing, the other kids made fun of Lucas.
It appears that from a very young age, Lucas put up with teasing from his classmates.
In elementary school, because he was a bit overweight. In middle school, he was teased about his last name, Tronche, slang for face. In high school, a few students made fun of him because the back of his head was flat.
So the possibility arises that Lucas committed suicide.
I don't believe it at all, because Lucas was really happy to be alive.
Lucas is religious. He's very spiritual. And I don't think he'd commit suicide.
Then, 48 hours after Lucas's disappearance, Nathalie Tronche receives some shocking information.
I get a phone call from a young girl who tells us that on the bus, she heard other young people saying, Lucas is in hiding. We know full well that Fabien is hiding him in Saint-Gervais.
The girl adds that Fabien is not a friend of Lucas's, but they attend the same high school. Nathalie Tronche immediately informs the police. The investigators then go to Fabien's home in Saint-Gervais, a small town near Bagnols-sur-Cèze. Near his house, they discover an interesting piece of writing.
The investigators find an inscription not very far from the house which says, Lucas, it's Fab, with an arrow pointing towards the house.
At that moment, we had a lot of hope because we thought, that's it. He's there, he's hiding, he's afraid to come home, he's done something stupid, or he thinks he has, and that's it.
But this hope is short-lived. The police quickly establish that Fabien doesn't know where Lucas is. However, the boy admits to writing the words in the soil.
He says it was to tell Lucas to come by if he's in the area.
So where is Lucas? In search of clues, the investigators search his room from top to bottom. They find 120 euros, all his savings, as well as his ID and bus cards.
Generally, young people who run away take money. And Lucas didn't take any money at all. He left all his money in his room, and he didn't take his things. He didn't take any clothes. He didn't take anything.
Running away without taking money seems very surprising. But Eric and Nathalie Tronche may have an explanation. Lucas could have left voluntarily, motivated by one of his great passions.
He loves nature. He loves animals. He loves survival shows.
The investigators discover a teenager fascinated by survival in hostile environments.
What's more, they know he's a scout, so he's used to sleeping outside in the wilderness, which he knows how to handle. At that moment, the possibility arises that he could have left on his own free will to go and tackle the wilderness, like the host of that TV show.
Lucas's parents cling to the hope that their son is voluntarily hiding in the woods. During the neighborhood investigation, the police collect a testimony that reinforces this theory. A woman tells them that the exterior lights of her farm came on twice on the night of the disappearance. First time at 12:40 a.m., and the second time an hour later.
These lights, according to her, only go off if a human passes, not an animal. It should be noted that it was a very cold night. And so this neighbor is wondering if Lucas came to take shelter in her barn to warm up a bit.
The farm is around 3 miles from Lucas Tronche's house. The investigators take this testimony very seriously.
They inspect the entire farm. It's a farmhouse with several buildings. There's a garage, a barn, and a well. They search and inspect everything. They spend hours there. They scan every nook and cranny with a magnifying glass, but they don't find anything.
It's impossible to know if Lucas did pass through here. Nagar, at the beginning of the case, the deputy public prosecutor authorized the press to broadcast a missing person appeal. The objective is obviously to collect as many testimonies as possible. But in this case, why hasn't an Amber Alert been issued?
An Amber Alert can't be issued just like that. There are criteria which mean that the legal authorities must have precise information to offer the public so that the public can help them in return. For example, it's necessary to have seen the child get into an adult's car, to have the vehicle's license plate or even a description of the adult. Above all, we must be sure that it is an abduction and not just a disappearance, even a concerning one. But at this point in the investigation, we don't have any of this information. Above all, we're still considering the possibility that he ran away or had an accident, so an Amber Alert can't be issued.
An official investigation into abduction and false imprisonment is opened. Lucas Tronche's parents quickly register as the plaintiffs. What does this mean exactly?
Someone who considers themselves a victim of a criminal offense has the possibility, when an official investigation is opened, to register as the plaintiff before the examining magistrate. When this status is acquired, they will become party to the proceedings. They will be able to participate. For example, they may ask the examining magistrate for an interview. They may request to meet people who are under investigation. Above all, they will have access through their lawyer to the case file, meaning they will be able to see in real time what investigative measures have been carried out, request some and contest others. When Lucas' parents register as plaintiffs, all these rights are granted to them. And there is another point, this time more psychological, but which shouldn't be overlooked. When you are a plaintiff, you are a participant in the proceedings. It may feel a little less like things are slipping from your grasp.
We heard Lucas's parents' anguish and distress. It must be terrible to be faced with such an ordeal. Does the law outline psychological support in this kind of situation?
No, the law does not outline psychological support. Besides, that isn't its role. However, there are many associations that exist to help victims and accompany them throughout all the criminal proceedings.
1 week after Lucas's disappearance, a new testimony is brought to the investigators' attention. A 25-year-old biker is convinced that he crossed paths with Lucas on a country road, 9 miles from Bagnols-sur-Cèze.
The young biker tells the investigators that while riding down this remote lane, he came across a teenager who looked like he didn't want to be seen.
He thought it was strange that this young boy was there. He rode a little further, then he turned around and went back just to see the person's face.
The biker describes the teenager he passed.
A kid between 5'3" and 5'5". That's about Lucas's height, and wearing the same outfit as Lucas.
What's troubling is that he describes Lucas's down jacket. He also describes the bag, the pants, and the shoes. It's troubling.
The biker provides another important detail.
He's really talking about Lucas because he also describes the distinctive feature where his head is slightly flat at the back. This biker describes this distinctive feature, so this makes it even more believable.
This is a detail that catches the police's attention, since it's a detail that had never been given.
Police officers go to the location with the biker, and they discover a hunting cabin near the lane.
Inside, they find a knife, an empty water bottle, and some kind of basic bedding. For the investigators, this discovery is interesting because it supports the voluntary departure lead. Lucas might have stayed at this place for a few days, maybe a night or two, to hide.
The investigators search the area around the cabin. They return in the middle of the night in hope of surprising Lucas there. In vain. They then learn that the witness has a unique profile.
He is someone with a record for burglary, theft, drug use, and driving without a license. As is customary, the investigators look at this young man's social media. And this is also interesting since they discover that this young man has a passion for guns. He even says at one point that he loves guns so much that he would like to become a hitman.
According to Nathalie Tronche, this sizable criminal record is paradoxically proof that his testimony is true.
For me, it gives credibility to his testimony because this young man had no interest in calling the police. I met him later, I talked with him, I looked him in the eye, and I believe he's telling the truth.
But the investigators do not share Nathalie Tronche's opinion. The biker goes from being a simple witness to a suspect.
So there you are. The police officers have someone with a unique profile in front of them.
Montpellier PD takes a close interest in this apparent witness.
The investigators visit this young man's home, and they come across hunting rifles.
Samples are taken from the guns in the bathroom and in the kitchen.
They look for a small clue, whether it's a trace of blood or DNA that could prove Lucas was there. At the time, the investigators' idea is that he could have had a bad encounter that went wrong.
No evidence connects the biker to the disappearance. The young man keeps saying that he's convinced that the teenager he crossed paths with is Lucas Tronche. In Bagnols-sur-Cèze, the search for Lucas continues. His parents, Nathalie and Eric, want to believe that their son is somewhere close to home. They know that several witnesses think they saw Lucas, so they keep looking for him in the countryside.
At the crack of dawn at 5 a.m. in March, Eric and I got on our bikes and went up and down all the small roads at the bottom of the hill shouting, "Lucas!"
Eric and Nathalie Tronche are not alone in their search.
It's extraordinary how many people rallied together. Several thousand joined the search. As a reporter, I'd never seen this. I'd never even imagined that. I didn't think so many people would come.
It was really a huge relief because we were left to our own devices.
At the town hall, Jean-Yves Chapelet takes matters into his own hands.
I'm fortunate to have done my military service in the paratroopers, so I learned a very long time ago how to scour a territory. The more people who arrive, the more teams that form, the more we can expand our search area.
I walked, on average, between 6 and 7.5 miles per day. I forced myself. I was exhausted. I had never walked so much for someone. But it was something that spurred you on.
The first few weeks, I didn't sleep much. And I think I'm not the only one. Because you equate Lucas with your own child.
It was spectacular because for us it brought hope. The more of us there were, the more chance we had of finding Lucas, if he was injured somewhere and in danger.
It's during one of these searches that a group of volunteers see someone sitting at the top of a cliff.
We shouted. There were 3 of us, 3 guys with voices like mine. We shouted, so it was loud. The person was looking, so we waved our arms. Come down. If that's you, Lucas, come down. We're here to help you. We'll give you a hand.
The group decides to take a picture of the figure.
For me, it could be Lucas. We tell him, we're coming up. We're coming to get you. If you're scared, don't move. We try to reassure him. At that moment, we think it's Lucas. He's run away. He's going to come down. We're going to take him home. We're happy, you know, like when we're bringing home a trophy. We're really happy.
But the figure moves away and disappears into the vegetation. And a few minutes later, night falls. Nathalie and Eric Tronche decide to help their son survive alone in the wilderness.
We hoped he was really hidden in the hills. He was hungry and thirsty, and we would help him by giving him something to eat and drink. That's all we hoped for.
We put food in different key places where paths met so that he could eat and drink.
And in an attempt to communicate with Lucas, Eric and Nathalie Tronche put up little messages in the wilderness, telling their son to meet them in the pumpkin patch.
It's our code for where we found pumpkins in a forest, a place nobody else knows. My mindset was that maybe it was going to work. For a month, I went every night to that forest to wait for Lucas. After a month, after 30 missed appointments, I thought, there's no point. I'm not living anymore. I spent my nights all alone in the forest, risking attacks from wild boars. So I stopped.
Is it really possible that Lucas had an accident or committed suicide without the many search parties managing to find him? Is it really possible that the teenager is still hiding out in the wild and refusing to return home? At the same time, the police are considering another lead. What if Lucas has been murdered? As in all homicide cases, the investigators start by looking at the family.
The investigators, from the beginning of the investigation, must ask questions, even if it isn't necessarily easy to go there. But they have to ask questions about Lucas's family. They have to check that Valentin is telling the truth. They have to find out if something happened that afternoon before Valentin went to the pool.
There was no sign of a struggle in the family home on the evening of the disappearance. Nothing out of the ordinary. The investigators still decide to pursue the lead. They go over the house with luminol, a chemical that can reveal bloodstains invisible to the naked eye. No significant traces appear during this examination.
I understood that this was the procedure. I think it's completely normal, so they can immediately eliminate the possibility that Lucas was killed by us or by his brother.
The investigators then interview all the family members.
We were questioned for a long time. I don't know how long it went on for, but at least 5 hours. We talked about what we did that day and how Lucas was.
The investigators want to reconstruct March 18, 2015, minute by minute. Where was Lucas? What did he do? Who was he with? That day, he arrived at school at 8 a.m.
We said hello that morning since we had classes in the morning. Then we went to the gym because we had sports classes, and then we left. I didn't see him again.
At noon, classes ended. Lucas was expected home for lunch with his 2 brothers and the woman who watched them on Wednesdays. The investigators watched footage from the security camera of his walk home. Lucas appears in the footage at 12:09 p.m., walking towards his home. Around 12:30, Lucas got to his house. The nanny left at 3 p.m. with Arthur, his little brother. Lucas and Valentin were then left home alone. Valentin is questioned by the police on March 20th and March 26th between 9 p.m. and 12:45 a.m.
The interrogations for Valentin were very hard. He had never experienced a police interrogation before. You're asked questions one after the other. They say, what were you doing? Maybe you had an accident with your brother. Tell us where he's hiding.
The police ask him several questions about his relationship with his brother. How are things between them at home? Do they get along well?
Valentin is distraught.
He loves his brother. That's what he tells them. He loves his brother. He's upset that he's missing. He had absolutely nothing to do with Lucas's disappearance.
I think Valentin suddenly aged.
Valentin describes, without ever changing his story, his afternoon with Lucas. He says he spent most of his time in his room on his computer.
At some point, he came into the kitchen for a snack, to look for something to eat. He looked outside and he saw that Lucas was in the middle of the yard. He doesn't know what he was doing in the yard. He was on his phone.
To confirm this statement, the investigators carry out checks with Lucas's cell phone operator.
The checks show that Lucas was on his cell phone using the internet between 3 and 5:14 p.m., at which point he turned off his phone.
Valentin tells the police officer that he left the house on a kick scooter at around 10 past 5. The investigators check the security camera footage in the neighborhood. They see Valentin heading for the bus stop on a scooter at 5:09 p.m. A second camera films him at 5:26 in the town center, very close to the bus.
The footage is very clear. We see Valentin all alone on his scooter. There's no sign of Lucas in the footage. The security camera footage confirms what Valentin said.
Valentin also claims to have called Lucas twice before getting on the bus at 5:30 and 5:34. The phone records also confirm his statements.
None of this evidence stops the investigators from continuing to investigate Valentin, so they bug his phone for 2 months.
They listened to all these conversations, trying to analyze what he was saying, maybe looking for something that could incriminate him. He's 17 years old. If he had done something, he would have cracked under the weight of his guilt at some point. You would have sensed that something was off.
There's no reason to question the word of Valentin, his parents, or his little brother. The family lead is now closed. Jean-Marc, what does Valentin's interrogation tell us?
Valentin is very exact in the statements he gives to the investigators. He gives a detailed account of the day his brother Lucas went missing. These details can be verified by checking phone records and video footage. These checks corroborate Valentin's statements, so it seems that he's telling the truth.
But then why, in your opinion, was his phone wiretapped for several weeks?
Valentin was the last person to see his brother Lucas on the day he disappeared. So it's normal, through wiretapping, to see who he is in contact with and to listen to the content of the conversations he has. What's more, it's important to try to find out if he has been the victim of blackmail or threats that would prevent him from speaking freely.
Valentin tells the investigators that he saw Lucas in the afternoon with his phone in his hand outside the house. Can we infer anything from this?
It could suggest that Lucas wanted to be alone to make a phone call without his brother hearing. But Lucas's phone records show that he didn't make any calls. Lucas simply browsed the internet, so he had no reason to be alone.
The investigators asked Lucas's cell phone operator if he could provide them with a summary of the teenager's browsing history. But according to our information, the operator has not been able to respond to this request.
It's a great pity. It would have made it possible to know which websites Lucas had visited and what type of information he was looking for. What's more, it might have also made it possible to find out which application he could have used to potentially chat with someone. It would have shed new light on the case. It could have made it possible to find out his immediate plans.
While the forensic investigations at the house found nothing, another criminal lead is being considered: a bad encounter. It's now been 10 days since Lucas disappeared. Is it possible that the teenager crossed paths with a predator? Was he abducted or killed by a stalker? These questions are now at the center of the investigation.
Generally, predators go after weakened prey.
If Lucas went out for a walk and was approached by someone asking him for help, I think Lucas would help them. So that's a concern. The possibility of a bad encounter is very plausible to me. A bad encounter that could have gone as far as murder. Yes, for me it's plausible.
Hundreds of locals are questioned, as well as joggers and walkers. But no one saw anything suspicious on the day of Lucas's disappearance.
Once the police have checked the immediate vicinity of the neighborhood, they have to expand. And to expand, they look at video surveillance.
The police pull out all the stops to find out who passed through Bagnols-sur-Cèze on March 18, 2015. They view the security camera footage of the Cèze Bridge, which provides access to Lucas's neighborhood.
They are interested in this bridge and this road because there aren't hundreds of bridges over the Cèze.
The investigators focus their research on the time slot of the disappearance. They take down the license plates of all the vehicles that crossed the bridge between 5:08 and 5:38 p.m. 1,100 cars are noted down.
The investigators check and identify all the vehicle's owners. They find out where they started from to determine whether any vehicles are connected to Lucas's disappearance.
This enormous task doesn't lead to identifying any suspects. The police officers also list all the cell phone numbers that were traced on the masts in the area on the day of the disappearance.
It allows the police to get a picture of the people who were physically in the area at the time.
They go through all the communications, several 100,000 in just half a day, between 4 and 10 p.m. on March 18th. There are more than 1 million over the full day. Even for the mast closest to the parents' home, there are more than 1,000 communications to analyze.
At the same time, the investigators consult the FIJE, the National Sex Offender Registry.
They think that maybe a sex offender is involved in this disappearance.
The police discover that 35 people are registered in Bagnols-sur-Cèze and that 31 others are registered in the small villages north of Bagnols-sur-Cèze. So that's 66 people.
I was very surprised to learn that. It isn't reassuring. It feels like we're discovering another world. As a parent, I'm worried.
It's true that when these numbers come out, it's chilling. These are particularly worrying profiles since most of the cases involve minors.
The 66 individuals are questioned, their alibis checked, and for some, their homes searched.
They don't leave anything to chance. It's a huge task. It takes them several weeks, and it doesn't lead anywhere.
Negar, we've just seen that the police have been looking for potential suspects in the FIJE, the National Sex Offender Registry. Who are the individuals in this registry?
The FIJE is a registry that was created by a law of March 2004. It's maintained by the Criminal Records Department under the authority of the Ministry of Justice. It contains the names of all the people who have been convicted of extremely serious offenses set out by the law, which are of a sexual nature and/or have been committed on minors. For example, violence towards and murders of minors. The circulation of child pornography, rape, torture, and cruelty are part of this list.
Can you tell us what the point of this registry is?
It's a tool in the fight against repeat sexual offenses. People who are registered with the FIJE have obligations, such as to regularly and promptly provide or update their address. And if justified by the risk they pose, they may even be required to report once a month to the police station near their home. So the idea is for the authorities to keep track of the people who have been convicted of these offenses, to be able to quickly identify and locate them if required by the investigation of a new offense of this nature.
At the time of Lucas Tronche's disappearance, 66 people on this registry live in Bagnols-sur-Cèze or the surrounding area. Why is this number so high?
For two reasons. First, the number of people registered in the FIJE can only increase over time, since duration of registration is long, from 20 to 30 years, depending on the severity of the offense and whether the offender was an adult or a minor at the time. Second, some of these offenses, even though they are not the most serious in terms of penalties, are committed frequently, such as those involving internet child pornography. So this explains why the number of offenders in the FIJE increases each year.
Although the checks carried out of the individuals on the registry led nowhere, a woman's spontaneous testimony revives the investigation. She says that on the afternoon of Lucas's disappearance, she was walking with her father near the teenager's house. She clearly remembers crossing paths with a man she had never seen in the area before, a man who was acting strangely.
This man seemed fishy to me. He made me a little anxious. We didn't stay by the Cèze River for long on account of that man. We went back to the house. I felt uneasy.
Marie-Joseph Ruggieri got the feeling that the man had something to hide.
What disturbed me about this man was his gaze, which wasn't direct. He said hello, but he turned his head away. That's what worried me. I found it a very strange and shifty look. That's what worried me.
On July 22, 2015, 4 months after Lucas's disappearance, the investigators go to the witness's house to draw up a police sketch. Marie-Joseph Ruggieri describes a man of around 40 years old, bald, without glasses, thin, with an elongated face, hollow cheeks, and tattoos on both forearms. 3 months later, the police sketch of the tattooed man is made public. But no one comes forward to identify this individual.
The investigators want to find this man since he's a possible witness.
They made several inquiries. They came back several times to visit me at home.
What was this man doing near the Tronches' home on March 18, 2015? Could he have seen something or been involved in Lucas's disappearance? It's impossible to answer these questions while the identity of the tattooed man remains a mystery.
It scares us because it's possible a predator was involved. Someone not from the area who was there that day, who we don't know, and who abducted Lucas.
It's already been 6 months since Lucas went missing. The bad encounter lead is now at the forefront, but the police are still unable to shed light on the circumstances of the disappearance. That's when they find out an important piece of information.
At the end of September 2015, a few months after Lucas's disappearance, something interesting happened in Beaucaire, around 30 miles from Bagnols. A 16-year-old teenager was the victim of an attempted abduction.
The connection is immediately made with the disappearance of Lucas Tronche. The boy who managed to escape is questioned by the police as a matter of urgency. He says that 2 men tried to force him into a white truck. And he remembers a particularly important detail.
One of them had a tattoo on his arm, which is of great interest to the investigators in terms of the search for the tattooed man.
Is this the same man seen near Lucas's home on the day of the disappearance? On October 2nd, 2015, the teenage victim of the abduction attempt helps to create a police sketch.
He gives details that match the police sketch of the man that was seen next to Lucas's house. Hollow cheeks, a shaved head, a rather thin man in his 40s.
The police sketch made with the teenager looks a lot like the tattooed man who's wanted in the investigation into Lucas's disappearance. So the two cases could be linked. The police then come across a case that surprisingly has gone unnoticed. They learn that 14 months before Lucas disappeared, another teenager narrowly escaped being kidnapped. And this second incident took place in Bagnols-sur-Cèze.
A 13-year-old boy says that he was walking down the street and a white truck approached him and started driving at the same speed he was walking. A man tried to grab him by the arm. He managed to pull himself free.
The similarities between the different cases are very disturbing.
These people could be using the same modus operandi, using a truck to target young teenage boys. There are quite a few things that suggest that the police may be dealing with a team of serial kidnappers.
So, at that moment, the investigators wonder if Lucas was also the victim of these people who, that time, might have managed to kidnap him.
Are teen abductions really rampant in the area? The question frightens the residents of Bagnols.
At the time, the entire town is traumatized. You go to the local cafe and they're talking about it. You meet students' parents and they're talking about it. You go to the market, they're talking about it.
There was a fear that other children would disappear. We kept an eye on each other.
My parents were very stressed. After the disappearance, they stressed out the moment I didn't answer messages or calls. So it was hard for me to feel them stressing out all the time and being afraid that something would happen.
Panic sets in, and people are really scared. Everyone is afraid of their child being taken. That's what it comes down to. Everyone is thinking about it. The description of this white van regularly circles around on social media.
Hoping to identify the kidnappers, the police consult their criminal database, Salvac.
It's a database that lists all solved and unsolved cases, where you can cross-check all the data recorded in each file.
The police use their software to search for individuals with forearm tattoos who have been implicated in similar cases. And the name of a homeless man emerges from the cross-checks.
He's about 35 years old, has a shaved head, is skinny, of European origin, and has a tattoo on his arm.
The physical description of the homeless man arouses the investigators' curiosity.
His appearance seems to match the police sketch that has been drawn up.
The investigators become aware of this individual's criminal record. This homeless man has been convicted for various violent offenses committed just 50 miles from Bagnols-sur-Cèze. Something else strengthens the police officer's suspicions.
The investigators discover that this homeless man spends time with another social outcast, also convicted of sexual assaults, who, at the time of Lucas's disappearance, was squatting somewhere near the Tronche family's home.
An important detail, this other outcast also has a tattooed forearm. The police investigate these two individuals. It turns out that on the day of Lucas's disappearance, both men's cell phones were detected in Bagnols-sur-Cèze. The police call in the teenager who was almost kidnapped 6 months after Lucas disappeared. They show him photos of the two suspects.
The boy is adamant. They are not the people who tried to kidnap him.
The two outcasts don't seem to be involved in the kidnapping attempts. But what about the disappearance of Lucas Tronche?
It isn't necessarily easy to investigate these two outcasts, since they move around a lot. It's not always clear where they live or what their habits are.
The investigators finally managed to locate the two men. When questioned, they deny any involvement in Lucas's disappearance. There's no material evidence linking them to the case today. Montpellier PD have since learned that the teenager who claimed to have narrowly escaped abduction 14 months before the disappearance of Lucas Tronche fabricated his story. As for the other boy, he seems to have been the victim of a fake kidnapping, which turned out to be an intimidation tactic as part of a family feud. While all these leads are closing one after the other, the investigation is revived by a letter which brings hope. On October 22, 2015, it's been 7 months since Lucas disappeared. An anonymous letter addressed to Eric and Nathalie Tronche is sent to the editorial staff of RTL. Lucas's parents shouldn't worry. He's okay. No bad encounters. He loves his family. He's okay. He's not sick. He's okay. He's okay.
The style of the letter suggests someone rather inflexible, because first of all, he writes in capital letters, in block letters, on lines. Everything is well defined. He underlines words he finds important 3 or 4 times. Everything points to this being someone with a rigid personality.
Is it possible that the author of this letter is with Lucas? 2 leaves were enclosed in the envelope.
1 lime tree leaf and an ivy leaf, which are identified immediately. We say to ourselves, it makes Lucas's initials, L and T. Maybe Lucas put it inside to show that the letter is true.
The letter is immediately handed over to the police. Samples are taken from the adhesive tape of the envelope. An unknown male DNA profile is isolated. 5 months later, on March 23, 2016, a second anonymous letter is sent to the town hall of Bagnols-sur-Cèze. Like the first letter, it's written on a small sheet of graph paper. Once again, the writer reassures Lucas's parents. For a year, you've been worried about Lucas being gone. He's fine, and he isn't sick. You miss him, but don't worry, he's fine. He's eating well, even more than before. Lucas is fine, Lucas is fine.
It's very frustrating, because it just says that he's fine, but we don't know more. We want him to keep writing letters.
On April 13, 2007, Lucas's parents receive a third letter. Then more and more arrive. In total, the anonymous writer sends them 11 letters, always with the same handwriting, always on the same paper.
My colleagues and I were able to see photocopies of the anonymous letters when we were doing our article. These were letters that were traced with a ruler, with capital letters written by hand, with words that were underlined several times to reinforce a message.
With each letter, we think, we're going to get more information. Maybe there will be proof. Maybe there will be something that will allow us to find Lucas. Every time.
At one point, we were only living for these letters. We were waiting for the next one.
It was really an addiction. The person made us addicted to the letters he sent us.
In a reassuring tone, the writer gives details about Lucas's life.
I'm easily affected by them since I'm his mom, and I'm only asking for one thing, for Lucas to be alive.
According to the letters, Lucas is allegedly living with adults and children, but does not have access to the internet. The writer explains that the teenager left of his own volition and is not being held against his will.
We got the impression that he was in a community, and someone had taken him under their wing and was writing for him, as if he had fallen into a cult, so he couldn't write.
It gives us hope that he's alive, and that we'll see him one day.
The writer accurately describes Lucas's tastes.
In the letter, he says Lucas doesn't like soccer, and we think, yes, it's true, he doesn't like soccer. There aren't many children who don't like soccer.
All these little things make Lucas's new life a reality. But the main thing is that Lucas is alive somewhere and happy.
No one can tell if the anonymous writer is telling the truth or if they're a pathological liar. Tracking them down becomes the police's primary objective.
The investigators immediately focus on the paper because the paper is interesting. It has red grids and red edges. It isn't paper you see everywhere.
The police try to find the seller so that they can trace the buyer.
But the investigators are unable to find out which brand sells this paper. They then look at the newspaper sheet that makes up the first envelope.
It's a big task because there are a lot of newspapers in France. Finally, these investigations lead to a newspaper that is distributed around Valence and Drôme.
The writer used a page from the Dauphiné Libéré, so they could live in the area where this daily newspaper is distributed, especially since all mail is sorted at the Valence Processing and Distribution Center.
This confirms the theory that the writer may be living in Valence, or at least the surrounding area.
The investigators then decide to set a trap for the letter writer.
Whenever Lucas is mentioned, a letter is sent. The police let us know they wanted to collaborate with us, and we publish an article with Lucas's mother's testimony.
Hoping for a new letter, the police secretly cordon off the Valence Processing and Distribution Center. They then sort through all the mail, one by one.
It's painstaking work. It's a mammoth task. They had to analyze and take out several thousand letters a day for weeks to find one of the anonymous letters.
The police analyzed the Processing and Distribution Center security camera footage. They spot a man who could be their suspect.
They see that someone posted a letter at 4 a.m. Then they follow this person, who was on a scooter.
Thanks to the license plate of the scooter, the investigators identify the man who posted the letter.
They find a 57-year-old man who lives alone and works in a megastore.
On July 2nd, 2016, at 7:10 a.m., the police arrest this individual. They establish that he is the letter writer. Tensions are high because the man is suspected of abducting Lucas.
Lucas could be locked in his basement.
The investigators search his house.
We think we're going to find Lucas. He's going to tell us where Lucas is, and this nightmare is going to end. That's what we think.
Hope is at an all-time high. Eric and Nathalie are convinced that in the morning, after the search, Lucas will come home.
While the parents hope to find Lucas alive, the investigators are considering all possibilities.
Dogs are brought in, which are trained to find human remains.
The searches come to nothing. The letter writer is then questioned at the police station in Montpellier. He quickly admits that he wrote the letters to give Eric and Nathalie Tronche hope. It was his DNA that was revealed on the envelope, but he swears he's not connected to Lucas's disappearance.
The authorities do everything that needs doing and tell the parents that he was a liar and no one was there. So it's very painful for Eric and Nathalie.
The police have nothing concrete against him, except for the fact that he sent a few anonymous letters.
After 34 hours in custody, the man walks free from the police station.
We feel very bad. We think, well, we aren't going to see Lucas. Lucas dies a second time.
Everyone totally broke down. Everyone. I shouldn't say this, but I cried about it at home.
All this time spent on this compulsive liar has undoubtedly disrupted the investigation.
The investigators wasted a lot of time because of him. Public money was spent on DNA analysis, and the police force was monopolized. It's unforgivable.
Eric and Nathalie Tronche decide to press charges against this individual for premeditated violence.
We're appalled. I chose to react, to stop it from happening again.
To call for a symbolic conviction. Sending multiple letters with that kind of content and psychological manipulation at that level, no. It wasn't someone who wanted to do us good. It was someone who wanted to torture us. And he managed to torture us. Yes.
Nagar, as we've seen, the proceedings against the man who sent the anonymous letters were initiated by Lucas's parents. Does that mean that without them pressing charges, this man would never have been in trouble with the law?
Not necessarily. In our penal system, the person who initiates proceedings is the public prosecutor. They just need to know that something has been committed, which they consider an offense. So most often, the offense is brought to their attention when the victim presses charges, but the public prosecutor can also be informed in other ways and spontaneously decide to initiate proceedings. Going back to our case, it was as part of the investigation into Lucas's disappearance that the public prosecutor became aware of the letter writer's criminal conduct. So even without Lucas's parents pressing charges, he could have decided to initiate proceedings against him.
On October 30th, 2017, the Criminal Court of Nîmes sentenced the letter writer to 2 years in prison with 1 year suspended for premeditated violence. What do you think of the classification of the offense and the severity of the sentence?
Violence as defined by the criminal code is not only physical violence, but also psychological. Someone whose behavior causes shock, even emotional, can be prosecuted for violence. And for premeditated violence, which is an aggravating factor, the criminal code outlines up to 3 years in prison and a €45,000 fine. So, to return to our case, the letter writer's 1 year sentence is obviously very severe. But it takes into account the shock that Lucas's parents, who were already distressed by their son's disappearance, must have felt when they realized that no one had been in contact with him, contrary to what was indicated in the anonymous letters.
Since the beginning of the investigation, Eric and Nathalie Tronche have been in regular contact with the police. They trust and appreciate the work they're doing, but this hasn't stopped them from taking action themselves in the hope of finding their son.
Take a good look at this face. This is our son Lucas, who has been missing for a year and a half. You may have crossed paths with him. Please help us find him. Contact us on retrouvonslucas.fr.
This commercial was broadcast in 2016 in 500 gas stations across France.
We decided to shock people with this video by saying, "This is our son Lucas. Look, this is our son Lucas," because we wanted to shock people. We want people to react.
When you know just how many people go to gas stations, it means several million views of Lucas's missing person appeal.
Eric and Nathalie Tronche's friends have founded an association to increase media coverage. A local truck driver even has Lucas's missing persons appeal posted on his truck.
There are at least 30,000 views per day of these rigs by drivers. And over 7 years, that's millions of views. So this is a priceless gift.
While Lucas's loved ones undertake more and more initiatives, another disappearance of a teenager unnerves the Gare department. On March 1st, 2016, 1 year after Lucas's disappearance, 16-year-old Antoine Zoya left his home in Clarensac, 39 miles from Bagnols-sur-Cèze. He never came home again.
He left his house as if nothing had happened. He passed through his village in plain sight. And then after buying a lighter at the tobacconist's, he disappeared without taking any money, his ID, or any of his belongings. He disappeared like that in a few seconds.
Like for Lucas, major resources are deployed to find the teenager. In vain. Like Lucas, Antoine seems to have vanished into thin air. Lucas's loved ones are very affected by this disappearance.
There are 2 young people who have disappeared. We're looking for both now. We're going into double search mode.
On March 11, 2016, an official missing person investigation is opened. The Nîmes Criminal Investigation Unit of the Gendarmerie oversees the investigation. Very soon, the police officers working on the disappearance of Lucas Tronche approach this unit.
The investigators at that moment wonder if this could be the work of the same predator.
Because the similarities between the 2 cases are disturbing.
What's striking about Antoine Zoya's disappearance is that Like Lucas, he was apparently a young man who had no major issues and showed no signs of being unhappy. He's the same age as Lucas, just a few months apart.
Is it possible that Lucas and Antoine met the same dangerous person?
When Antoine disappeared, we were upset. And personally, I thought, there's a predator. A predator who kidnaps teenagers. After that, you can only imagine, for what purpose? For the purpose of sexual slavery? Murder? Not very nice things.
The investigators link both cases.
The idea is to now identify someone who would have been physically present at the scenes of both disappearances and who could possibly have abducted both teenagers a year apart.
By studying phone location tracking, the investigators identify hundreds of individuals who were present at the places where both teenagers went missing.
They end up with a considerable mass of information that must be processed, investigated, and verified. They have to find these people and retrace their steps on those days. What were they doing? Why were they in the area? Where were they going, and where did they come from?
The different police forces thoroughly investigate each of these individuals. Their alibis are checked one by one, but these investigations don't lead to identifying a common suspect. Jean-Marc, we've just seen that the disappearance of Antoine Zoya gave new momentum to the Lucas Tronche investigation. Antoine and Lucas are almost the same age. They live about 40 miles from each other. And finally, the circumstances of their disappearances seem similar. So the investigators have tried to find a link between both cases. How do the police go about this?
The difficulty is that it's necessary to go beyond these purely factual similarities and to carry out an in-depth investigation to try to establish concrete links between both cases. Of course, several technical investigations, particularly involving phone records, have been carried out, but it's also necessary to check if there's a link between the two teenagers. For example, trying to see if at one time or another they attended the same school, or if they did the same sports or extracurricular activities. Did they go to the same summer camp? Did they have mutual friends? In short, doing a lot of coherent, coordinated research. However, the problem is that two different police services are working on the cases. For Lucas Tronche, it's the National Police, and for Antoine Zoya, it's the National Gendarmerie.
It's no secret that the relationship is often difficult between these two services.
True, their relationship is sometimes a bit strained. But fortunately, very soon after the disappearance of Lucas Tronche, the Montpellier Police Department was supported by the OCRVP, the Central Office for Repression of Violence Against People. This national service is responsible for coordinating various investigations into homicides or disappearances, no matter which service was originally put on the case.
Throughout the investigation into Lucas Tronche's disappearance, major resources have been deployed, from checking phone records and video surveillance to identifying vehicle owners. Each time, thousands of pieces of data must be collected and processed. Jean-Marc, how is this work possible?
Of course, without IT, it wouldn't be feasible. It's done by cross-checking computer data. But this data doesn't just appear on the police's computers. We have to go and look for them in what we call requisitions. It's necessary to ask cell phone operators for information. However, there are more and more of these operators. It's also necessary to interview video surveillance companies, whether public or private. It's necessary to question civil services, which hold car registration documents and passports, as well as a lot of organizations, banks, insurance companies, credit agencies, and supermarkets. Or in short, it's an almost endless list.
More than 2 years after the disappearance of Lucas Tronche, on August 27, 2017, 8-year-old Maëlys goes missing during a wedding in Pont de Beauvoisin in Isère. 4 days later, a suspect is taken into custody. He's 34-year-old former soldier Nordal Leland. On November 30, 2017, he's indicted for child abduction and murder. A month later, Nordal Leland is indicted for another murder, that of Arthur Neuer, 28, who disappeared while hitchhiking on April 12, 2017. The authorities then wonder if Nordal Leland could be involved in other unsolved cases. They go back over several missing person cases in the southeast of France, including the cases of Lucas Tronche and Antoine Zoya.
Nordal Leland's profile is of interest to the investigators when it comes to the Lucas case, since he's suspected of committing crimes against people he didn't know and had no connection to. On the face of it, he has no connection with either Lucas or Antoine. In addition, he's someone who acts on impulse.
So he's someone who, at some point, could decide to kidnap someone and commit a crime. I think that's why the authorities are interested in him.
Very quickly, the investigation establishes that Nordal Leland regularly spent time in the areas where Lucas and Antoine disappeared.
Nordal Leland used to come to the Gard, since he has family who live near Bagnols-sur-Cèze. He also used to go partying in Montpellier, so he had to go through the Gard.
Lucas's parents anxiously follow the investigations into this new lead.
We thought the same thing could have happened to Lucas. He could have met him while walking around. Nordal Leland was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Lucas had been killed by that person.
The investigators try to retrace Nordal Leland's steps on March 18, 2015, the day Lucas Tronche disappeared.
He's not an easy person to investigate since he moves around a lot. He's a veteran who goes everywhere in his car. He has been seen all over France. And so the investigators have to look for evidence that could link him to Bagnols-sur-Cèze. They look at his bank accounts. They look at CCTV. They look everywhere for a sign that he was in Bagnols that day.
But it's the phone records of the former soldier suspected of being a serial killer which provide important answers.
It turns out that on the day Lucas went missing, March 18, 2015, his phones were detected in Isère, over 100 miles from Bagnols.
He would not have had time to come to the Gard to kidnap Lucas and go home to Isère.
For the investigators, Nordal Leland is therefore not responsible for Lucas's disappearance.
It's a huge relief because we think, let's keep going. That door is closed. We were scared. But that wasn't the right lead. For now, let's keep going. The investigation is ongoing. Anything is possible.
As for the disappearance of Antoine Zoya, the case has a tragic outcome. On September 29, 2018, hunters make a grisly discovery in a remote forest near Clarensac, the teenager's hometown.
They discover a body hanging from a tree. And next to this body, there's a bag containing some things. In particular, there's a knife inside. And very quickly, these items are identified as belonging to Antoine Zoya.
3 days later, on October 2, 2018, the autopsy results are unequivocal. This is the body of the teenager who disappeared 2.5 years earlier.
He died by hanging. Nothing suspicious was found on the body, so this rules out that Antoine was murdered, let alone by Nordal Leland.
This means that Antoine Zoya took his own life. The question of Lucas's possible suicide arises again.
I feel bad saying, no, I don't think it was suicide, because of Antoine's parents. It feels uncomfortable. I don't know. It's a possibility. But I don't believe it.
Then, a new twist revives the investigation into the disappearance of Lucas Tronche.
On October 17, 2017, we were informed that a search has taken place in Bagnols-sur-Cèze and that a person has been taken into custody.
This individual is the tattooed man for whom the police have been relentlessly searching for more than 3 years.
You can imagine at the police station, all eyes are on him, and all the investigators are questioning him to find out where he was. What did he do the day Lucas disappeared? Why was he spotted next to Lucas's house? Where is Lucas?
Is he just a witness? Or have the investigators finally found Lucas's kidnapper? To answer these questions, the suspect is interrogated all day. But the man has a cast-iron alibi. The same evening, his police custody ends. The tattooed man is totally in the clear. According to the investigators, he's not involved in Lucas's disappearance.
It's a relief since they were looking for an individual who potentially could have harmed or kidnapped Lucas. And that isn't the case.
Jean-Marc, the tattooed man seen near Lucas's house on the day of the disappearance has finally been identified after more than 3 years of searching. However, a police sketch of him had been widely distributed in Bagnols. How come this individual who lived in this municipality was not identified earlier?
I didn't see the tattooed man's face, but it could be that his resemblance to the police sketch was not obvious. Every investigator knows how unreliable police sketches can be. Reliability comes from several factors. On the one hand, the investigator who drew up the sketch must be familiar with the exercise. On the other hand, the witness needs the skills of observation, memorization, and description.
The discovery of Antoine Zoya's body in an isolated place far from his home obviously raises the possibility of suicide. When it comes to Lucas, as we've heard, Nathalie and Eric Tronche absolutely do not believe their son committed suicide. What's your opinion, Jean-Marc?
As investigators, we form an opinion based on verifiable, verified, and cross-checked evidence. However, there's nothing to suggest that Lucas was a depressed or suicidal child. On the contrary, his relatives described him as a cheerful teenager, happy to be alive and without any issues. What's more, the people who saw him that morning found him to be cheerful, not worried or depressed. I would like to add that the numerous searches organized methodically over a long period by the military, gendarmerie, police, firefighters, cavers, dog handlers, and hundreds of volunteers should have been able to find his body if he had committed suicide.
The investigators tried to find out if Nordal Leland could have crossed paths with Lucas Tronche. In the end, this led nowhere. You get the feeling that whenever a case is unsolved, the police start grasping at straws, like with Nordal Leland.
No, it's completely reasonable to go back over Nordal Leland's past to see if he crossed paths with anyone who was killed or has disappeared. Especially since Nordal Leland is being investigated in cases in which the victims have very different profiles. A little girl, a soldier, so nothing can be ruled out and everything must be checked. That's why the officers of the Ariane unit revisited 900 cases, including the Lucas Tronche case.
The investigation into Lucas's disappearance continues. No leads have been definitely ruled out, and the possibility that the teenager is still alive remains at the center of the investigation.
I imagine that he went somewhere else to start a new life. That's a possibility. A voluntary disappearance is in the realm of possibility. Start over. Maybe he was feeling overwhelmed, oppressed, or misunderstood at high school. He could have wanted to change everything and leave. Why not?
Is it possible that Lucas voluntarily left his family to start a new life elsewhere? This would take us from the theory of a simple runaway to an organized and long-term voluntary disappearance. This lead is still being considered. It was opened in the first weeks of the investigation. Because on March 29, 2015, 11 days after the disappearance, the police received a surprising testimony. A man said that in a mall 25 miles from Bagnols-sur-Cèze, he had met a teenager who looked a lot like Lucas. This witness was with his daughter.
What's troubling is that the girl actually knows Lucas because they were in the swimming club together. Even if they didn't train on the same day, they knew each other.
For them, it was Lucas. For those witnesses, it was really Lucas.
The father and daughter add an intriguing detail. That day, Lucas was apparently with a woman in her 50s.
They explained that this woman with brown hair seemed considerate with the teenager. She was gazing fondly at him and following a little behind him while he wandered through the departments.
The teenager, who looked like Lucas, seemed to have total confidence in the woman he was with.
For the police, the idea that Lucas left for love, maybe love for an older woman, starts to form.
The investigators request surveillance videos from the store.
To their great disappointment, all the cameras are fake. As a result, there's no footage.
With the witnesses' help, the police draw up a sketch of the mystery woman.
What the investigators want to know is if this woman was part of Lucas's close circle. Because Lucas is someone whose schedule is almost completely full. He doesn't have time to go and form other relationships after class.
We were shown the police sketch, which wasn't familiar at all to us.
The investigators look into the people who paid at the cash register. They analyze the credit card receipts of the purchases.
They identify 11 profiles that could match the woman's age.
They presented us with the names of the people who had been identified by their credit cards, but we didn't know them.
For the investigators, it's impossible to identify this woman and therefore to know for certain if the boy was Lucas.
The investigators, unfortunately, can't pursue this lead any further, and they're forced to leave it open. So for now, it's still an open lead.
I would so like for him to be free somewhere and to have chosen to start a new life. Personally, what I would like in that case, and what we need, is for him to give us a sign to reassure us. Then we could continue our lives in peace.
What if Lucas can't give his parents a sign? What if he's been held captive since the day he went missing? Several cases around the world have shown that this nightmare scenario is possible. The highly publicized 2006 news story of Natascha Kampusch from Austria, who was kidnapped at the age of 10 and managed to escape her kidnapper after 8 years in captivity, is far from unique.
When missing children reappear or are found years later, it gives us hope. We think to ourselves, it could happen to us. Lucas is going to come home. One day he's going to come home.
Other cases have hit the headlines. In October 2002, in the United States, Sean Hornbeck was kidnapped at the age of 11. Despite extensive searches, it was only 4 years later that the police managed to free him. In California, J.C. Dugard was falsely imprisoned from the age of 11 to 29. For all those years, she lived in a garden shed. So is it possible that Lucas has been living in captivity since March 18, 2015?
A case of false imprisonment where he absolutely could not get out? Yes, it's possible to be locked up somewhere and not be able to give any signs of life.
Yes, for me it's a theory. That's just as possible as the others. And that's one of the reasons why we have to keep fighting and searching. Because I'm thinking he's locked up somewhere, he's waiting. He's hoping we'll find him. His only hope is that we can find him and free him.
Jean-Marc, we've just talked about cases of children or teenagers being held captive over a long period of time. Do you think this is a possibility in Lucas's case?
We can imagine anything. As long as we don't have concrete evidence or serious leads, we can consider every possibility in missing person cases, even the most implausible ones. All I can say is that we don't have any examples in France of long-term false imprisonments of children or teenagers, except for some cases within the families, but we know that isn't the case.
So despite all the work done by the investigators, they've been unable to establish what happened to Lucas on Wednesday, March 18, 2015. What's the theory that you're leaning towards, Jean-Marc?
We have to think in terms of the facts. One thing seems certain. Lucas left home voluntarily. There was no sign of a struggle in the house. He put on his jacket. He took his backpack and his cell phone. That wouldn't have been the case if he had been abruptly taken out of his house. Then, at around 5:15 p.m., the neighbor said she saw him alone. So it also seems that no one was waiting for him outside his home.
But could Lucas have been meeting someone a little further out in the wilderness?
Of course, he could have had a secret meeting that he didn't want to tell his brother about. But his phone records did not show any unusual contact. All his friends have been questioned. This is a boy with a regimented lifestyle in a family where the children are closely supervised. But of course, he could have been going to meet someone he knew from one of his various activities.
Another possibility is that he had a bad encounter.
We can't rule that out. Lucas could have gone for a walk in the countryside and met the wrong kind of person. Beyond that, I can't say what may have happened because at that time of the year, in March, not many people go for walks in the countryside. No one is working in the vineyards, so an attacker could act discreetly.
Even today, investigations are still underway. Recently, dogs trained to search for human remains were brought to the area around Lucas Tronche's house, but nothing was found.
The police investigation is still active, and it will continue to be for as long as needed to get to the truth. Personally, I'm convinced that someone, somewhere, knows evidence that will lead to the truth.
The years pass, and Eric and Nathalie Tronche's pain is still just as raw.
We're waiting. We're waiting. We're... incomplete.
We have his brother, Arthur, who looks a lot like him. When I touch Arthur's hand, it seems that I'm touching Lucas's hand.
Since March 18, 2015, Nathalie and Eric Tronche have been fighting tirelessly to know the truth.
They're remarkable. Frankly, I think there are not many people who are capable of withstanding ordeals like this.
We need to know. We absolutely need to see that the investigation is moving forward. Whatever happens, we need to know.
Lucas would have celebrated his 20th birthday with his family and friends. So in the hope that Lucas is still alive, his parents are sending him this message.
I would like to tell him, if Lucas is listening, all we want is a little sign, a secret sign, a message for us, to reassure us, for him to share with us and tell us that he's alive. That's it. That's all we want.
If Lucas is listening, I would say that he has nothing to worry about. He can tell us he doesn't want to see us, and we'll leave it there. In any case, he should know that we love him, that we support him, and that we understand. We can help him too, if he wants. We can protect him. We can start over, if he needs us to. We can start from scratch somewhere else, if he wants.
Eric and Nathalie Tronche's daily lives are punctuated by events that constantly remind them of Lucas's absence. A birthday, a family dinner, a new school year, a Christmas party. So many moments that for now they must experience without their son, without knowing what happened to their child. A few months after the disappearance, they set up a phone number. They hope to collect testimonies with any useful information, and maybe, one day, receive a call from Lucas.